interpretation of what went on. All right, so herein, you see the transition from shamanistic practice to demonological practice. And now the question is, what else is going on at this point in history before we see Moxa start to take hold into medical theories? Because these theories are not as in keeping with what we do now, but they're formative to it. The Zhou dynasty is most well known for the development of Zheng and Xie as medical concepts. Zheng to be correct, Xie to be heterodox, or evil, or effectively incorrect. This theory is perhaps the most fundamental pole in Chinese medical thought. Zheng or Xie. And everything you interpret can be Zheng or correct process, Xie incorrect process. The Zhou dynasty is when this is developed as a theoretical framework of things, and it becomes the foundation actually of Confucianism. Is Zheng upright behavior versus Xie or heterodox self-interested behavior. You see this evolve over time. That is most centrally important for our understanding of the beginnings and rudiments of Moxa theory. Because, from a demonological perspective, are demons Xie or Zheng? Xie, they're uncooperative. Therefore, if the Moxa is supposed to scare away the demons, the Moxa must be increasing the Zheng components of the body. And Moxa becomes associated at this point with a Zheng or corrective function. Moxa is considered to Zheng the body. The Zheng Jing corrects meridians. Right? This is the first theoretical component of how Moxa starts to be explained. It makes the body more Zheng. It makes you more upright. Makes more upright Qi. And as we will see when we get into theory, that is still the fundamental idea in Moxa. Moxa helps make you more Zheng. If it makes you more Zheng, is it intrinsically tonifying? Yes or no? Not well, you have all been a little bit brainwashed with modern TCM. Moxa tonifies. Needles move. You've heard that before, right? The very traditional theory on Moxa is that Moxa leads to more Zheng, more upright nature that can be tonic. Does it have to be tonic? No, because Moxa can be dispersive. But it leads to more Zheng. It leads to a natural reorganization of the body into its normal components. If that's the case, Moxa has broad spectrum application. Not just the application to the weak patient, though certainly to the weak patient, because it can help supplant the weakness. But if it can make you more Zheng, everything more upright, then the patient who is disharmonized or excess or has some other horrible disease could have Moxa applied to them. And the question you need to ask yourself when you go through your basic TCM is basic modern TCM only uses a limited array of Moxa technique. And therefore, the limited array that you have probably been exposed to is generally tonic technique and generally increases warmth. So must be used in caution in cases of excessive heat. That doesn't mean the full range of Moxa technique has the same prescriptions on it. Right? But keep in your mind, because it's going to come back to us in a couple minutes when we keep teasing out Moxa theory, that Moxa helps make the body more Zheng, more upright, more correct, and reorganizes the body into a correct form. All right. We have to move forward to the development of just towards the beginning of the Han Dynasty. Because in the Han Dynasty, then after that on theory, we're going to kind of jump more to Moxa as a practical concern. But when you go to the Han Dynasty, which is organized in 209 to like 245, often able, or common era, depending on how you want to phrase it, BC or BCE. The Han Dynasty is where you see the development of correspondence medicine. And correspondence medicine is the medicine of the 5 phases. It's the medicine of the meridians and the correspondences and the Jingwell points and the shoestring points and all the fun things that you actually study now. If you were plucked out of history right now and transported back into the Han Dynasty, you'd only be first of all, you have to learn to speak Chinese, but then you'd only be minorly confused in their medicine. It would make sense to you relatively quickly, because most of what you are familiar with would already be in place. 5-phase thinking, pulse taking, tongue diagnosis, herbal decoctions, all these things were in existence by the time the Han Dynasty was up and rolling. Okay? If you were dropped in the Shang Dynasty, you'd be like, oh man, now I gotta go learn to be a shaman. Crap. you'd have a lot more to do. You got in the Zhou dynasty, you're like, oh, I got to learn demonology and how to exorcise demons. You get to the Han, it's making more sense. It looks more like what we have now, right? Preceding, within the 100 to 150 years preceding the Han dynasty, was when there was a general movement between 150 to 200 years of large amounts of things moving from oral into written tradition. So roughly 300 BCE, you see this massive movement into written tradition. That's when the Huangdi Neijing is written down. Okay? That's where a large number of classical texts are written down from oral tradition into written tradition. Now, if you get the opportunity to go look at the Donald Harper's book, the early Chinese medical literature, big fat book, probably $130, $150 book, so if you don't have that lying around, don't go buy it. But if you get a chance to look at that, he translates some of the Ma Wangdui findings. Ma Wangdui is an area in China, in Changsha, where a tomb was discovered that was sealed up in approximately 270 BC. And in that tomb, there was a noble woman entombed in here. Many of her items were put in with her. One of the things that was discovered there is the Daoyin Tu. The Daoyin Tu is the chart of guiding and pulling. It's a big wall scroll, bigger than anything we have in this room. There's a big wall scroll painted on silk that has pictures of people doing postures. And then, they're doing all the bird flies in heaven, bear dances over here, tiger jumps in the grass. Right? There's this whole series of postures, and the understanding was you would put it up on the wall and you did the postures. It's like the earliest aerobics chart ever. But it's evidence that by 270 BC, the Chinese not only had developed postures to stand in, had organized them into a chart, and had made it popular enough that somebody had it would hang on the wall. It's evidence that the prototypical forms of Qigong were being practiced as early as 300 BC, if not much, much earlier in history, because it's fully developed. It's historical evidence of, oh look, they used visual aids to remember these things. Okay? So that's why it's important from the historical perspective. Within this series of findings, you also see the Huangdi Neijing, the Yellow Emperor's Classical and Internal Medicine. You also see the Dao De Jing, which the version of the Dao De Jing found within the Ma Wangdui findings is backwards. It's the De Dao Jing, with the De part occurring before the Dao part in the sequence of the text itself. So if you have interest in that, go read Donald Harper's book, Early Chinese Medical Literature. But from our perspective, the most important thing is that in the Ma Wangdui findings is something called the Zhoujing. The Zhoujing, the Moxabustion classic. So somewhere in here, some great scholar put together, wrote down something called the Zhoujing. And Jing means classic. So the Moxabustion classic. The Zhoujing. The classic on Moxabustion. Right. From our point of view, it's interesting. It's not necessarily so practical, but it's interesting because it has a lot of weird things in it. It's kind of like the Wusha Erpingpan, which is the 52 prescriptions to cure disease, which is also in the Ma Wangdui findings. And it's got really, both of them have really interesting things because some of the things for the Moxabustion classic are, if you're covered in warts, you have to get a cat. And you take the cat, and you bring the cat, and you drown the cat at a crossroads. I don't know what, you brought a bucket, but you drown the cat at a crossroads. You drag the cat out, and you burn moxa on the cat. And that gets rid of your warts. So you read this, you're like, what? Some of the things in there are like, oh, if you have this disease and this disease, then you burn moxa on the body, and some of it's treating the body. Where if you have a pox, and this type of pox, and this type of boil, and sore, you burn moxa on the sore until it opens. When it opens, you burn moxa continuously on the sore until the sore crusts up. So it's cauterization in one part of it, but it also has weird things about like drowning a cat and things like you have to go burn moxa on a certain type of leaf on the tree. You don't take it off the tree, you burn it on the tree, and it's getting rid of your disease. So it's a really interesting text historically. It's not necessarily so practical. Maybe it does work. I don't know. I never tried it. So we could go do that. I'm not going to drown a cat. Don't worry. I'm on tape. I'm not going to drown a cat. But it's interesting historically because it's a bridge between the demonological theories that you see in the Zhou and the correspondence medicine theories you see in the Han, where they're talking about weird things about when a cat dies and burn this. At the same time, there's correspondences. Oh no, that's not going to get rid of your wart unless you also have the mulberry. There's some correspondence thinking.